Ever notice how the strongest men rarely argue? They don't raise their voice, beg to be understood, or chase validation. They just step back. And when they do, the temperature in the room drops. People fidget, eyes start searching. The silence gets so loud it makes everyone else talk more to fill it. That's not passivity, it's deliberate leverage. Withdrawal, when chosen, isn't retreat. It's control by absence. Machiavelli understood this long before social media trained everyone to over-explain. Strategic disappearance is a mirror. Step out, and people are forced to look at what your presence had been covering. Their dependency, their entitlement, their anxiety about no longer being able to summon you on command. Most people don't fear losing your affection, they fear losing their grip on you. If you've been the guy who always replies, always smooths things over, always explains himself just to keep the peace, you haven't been respected. You've been used. Predictability isn't a virtue in power dynamics, it's a liability. The man who is always available is never taken seriously. When you make yourself cheap, no one treats you as rare. You think your kindness builds connection, but kindness without boundaries breeds contempt. You become background noise, the emotional butler who refills everyone's glass while your own runs dry. Every yes you give when silence would have served you better trades dignity for a hit of feeling needed. Here's the shift. Stop measuring your value by your willingness to please. Scarcity is the bedrock of influence. The moment you feel that itch to over-explain, to prove your intentions to people who've never once reassured you, choose refinement, not revenge. Pull back to reintroduce yourself as a man whose silence carries weight. That's not cowardice, it's evolution. You're moving from reacting to positioning, becoming unreadable, unreachable, untouchable, and that's when attention finds you on its own. If this hits something in you, carve the new frame. Type in the comments, "I disappear to reclaim my power." And if you're ready to walk the path of silent strategy, subscribe, not to follow noise, but to rise above it as the kind of man who stops chasing respect and starts commanding it. Let's be blunt. Goodness alone won't protect you. Being useful isn't power. Being predictable isn't loyalty. Being constantly accessible is the death of respect. From childhood, you're trained to be agreeable. Say yes, don't make waves. Apologize even when you're not wrong. That training turns men into servants of emotion. Machiavelli would roll his eyes at moral submission. He was interested in power management. If you're always on call, always justifying, you've abdicated your throne, and you did it with a smile. You believe fast replies prove commitment. In reality, they build expectation, and expectation suffocates appreciation. The more you over-deliver, the more your effort becomes invisible. The cycle is simple. They message, you answer. They complain, you explain. They cause chaos, you provide calm. Suddenly, you're their crisis manager, their validation dispenser, their human shield against discomfort. You weren't born to be a buffer for broken people. You were born to live by your own standards, not their moods. The practical playbook starts here. Break the rhythm. Interrupt the pattern. Withdraw without preamble. Let them feel what your presence had been covering. Allow their comfort with your availability to collapse into discomfort with your boundaries. Replace predictability with tactical silence. Answer only when it serves you. Remember, access to your mind, time, and attention isn't a right. It's a reward. Before you respond, ask, does this person deserve a piece of my inner world? Or are they just addicted to the version of me that never says no? If it isn't a strong, grounded yes, it's a strategic no. That's not cruelty, it's clarity, not ego, sovereignty. If this stings, good. Let it burn away the parts that kept you controllable. If you're ready to strip out the code that trained you to serve without limit, lock the lesson with a comment. My predictability is my enemy. Subscribe. Not to borrow another voice, but to fortify your own. Here's the energy equation no one taught you. Your attention is currency, and manipulators don't need to overpower you if they can get you to spend it recklessly. Every useless argument, every emotional brushfire you rush to put out, every defensive explanation you give is a leak in your reserves. Burnout isn't mystery, it's strategic failure. The man who fires arrows at every shadow has nothing left when the real battle arrives. So conserve. Withdraw your energy from the pointless. Let fools implode in the silence you refuse to break. They'll call you cold, distant, selfish. That protest is confirmation. You've become hard to predict, impossible to provoke. Unreadable men are ungovernable. Guard your inner fire like a fortress. When your energy is sacred, your presence becomes rare. What is rare becomes power. Your default move to provocation? Pause. Ask, do they want resolution or control? If you can't tell, choose silence. Not because you're weak, but because you're done being played. If this resonates, seal it. My energy feeds no fools. From this point forward, you don't react, you calculate. You don't broadcast, you conserve. You don't chase, you rise. Silence isn't retreat, it's preparation. It's a trap disguised as stillness. The weak think silence means defeat. The powerful know it's camouflage. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man doesn't need to lie. He only needs to withhold. Because in a world obsessed with noise, the man who says nothing becomes a threat. When you stop feeding chaos with your words, you remove yourself from their script. You become unreadable. And what can't be read can't be controlled. People once praised your kindness, your reliability, your constant availability, until you stopped performing. Then the story changed. Suddenly, you're distant. You've changed. But here's the truth. They weren't admiring your character. They were admiring their control over you. Silence terrifies manipulators because it breaks the mirror. They used you to reflect comfort, and now that reflection is gone. They're left with only themselves. And most people can't stand what they see. The ones who called you dependable now call you arrogant. They label your boundaries as cruelty and your growth as betrayal. But that's not your concern. Don't react. You're watching their illusion unravel. Carl Jung called this the breakdown of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. Machiavelli would say it differently. Only when the mask falls does the game begin. When you stop being who they want you to be, you finally become who you choose to be. No longer polite, predictable, or endlessly available, but powerful. Let them misread your silence. Let them project their stories. Let them twist it however they need to. Because the most brutal exposure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from absence. That's when the truth of their dependency becomes clear. Your new command is simple. Don't explain. Don't chase. Don't clarify. Let the silence speak. Let it rattle the ones who mistook your cooperation for weakness. If this message stirs something deep inside you, write it down. My silence is the end of their illusion. Because in a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. In the game of power, silence is dominance. When you stop reacting, you don't avoid chaos, you control it. You flip the board. You leave them with no script to play from. They can't predict you, can't provoke you, can't even tell if you're still part of the game. Machiavelli said, It's not always necessary to strike. Sometimes, not moving at all is the most terrifying strike of all. When you withhold your reaction, you create pressure, a vacuum that forces others to reveal themselves. In their panic to fill your silence, they expose their hand. Most people have been conditioned to react instantly to every insult, every accusation, every emotional bait. Because the second you react, you lose sovereignty. You're no longer leading, you're being pulled. But when you say nothing, when you resist the urge to respond, they collapse under the weight of their own projection. Manipulators hate silence because they can't weaponize it, they can't twist it, they can't predict it. Your quiet dismantles their power. You don't need to argue. You don't need to justify. You don't need to win. Because silence itself is the end of their story. Carl Jung believed that silence reconnects you with your true self. Machiavelli would go further. He'd say it disconnects your enemies from theirs. It turns their aggression inward, forcing them to destroy themselves in the void you left behind. That's not weakness. That's siege warfare. A psychological strategy. They expend energy. You conserve it. They attack. You observe. They burn out. You sharpen. So remember this rule. He who speaks first exposes first. He who reacts loses the frame. But he who holds silence owns the moment. Let it stretch. Let them feel it. Let their own words echo until they're forced to face themselves. Because in silence, you reveal everything while showing nothing. If this hits something in you, lock it in. My silence commands. You were trained to justify your stillness, to apologize for needing peace, to make others comfortable, even at the cost of your own clarity. That programming ends now. Machiavelli wrote, "He who justifies every step gives others the right to question it." Every time you say, "Sorry I didn't reply," or "I was just busy," you reinforce the illusion that your time and energy belong to them. But they don't. They never did. Your silence is not an offense, it's a declaration. Your boundaries are not arrogance, they're architecture, the structure of self-respect. Detachment isn't cruelty, it's calibration. It's the quiet rebuilding of a man who finally sees how much he's given and how little was ever returned. The moment you stop explaining, you take back something sacred, authorship over your own narrative. Because the more people grow used to your explanations, the less they respect your intuition. They stop trusting your no and start expecting your apology. But their discomfort isn't your responsibility. You are not here to make everyone feel safe. You're not here to be universally liked. You're here to be clear. Be clear about who you are. Clear about what you allow. Clear about who earns your attention. Machiavelli said a ruler must choose between being loved or being respected. Only one guarantees stability. Too many men chase being loved, and in doing so, become slaves to emotion. They give their energy away like it's infinite. But clarity is a sword and silence. Its sheath. When you stop defending your peace, you start wielding both. So when they say, "You've changed," just smile. Because what they really mean is, we can't control you anymore. You're not here to be constantly available. You're not here to be endlessly explainable. You're here to evolve. And evolution never asks for permission. Let them speculate. Let them create stories about you. Let them wrestle with their confusion. Because every man who rises into sovereignty must first confront the guilt of no longer being available to those who only valued his obedience. If you feel that truth awakening inside you, write it now. I owe no explanations for protecting my peace. There's a kind of pain that few men ever speak of. It doesn't come from betrayal, or loss, or failure. It comes from silence, from the stillness that follows your withdrawal. At first, it feels like freedom. Then it feels like emptiness. Then comes the doubt. That haunting question. Did I go too far? Was I too cold? Did I destroy bridges I might still need? But if Machiavelli were standing beside you, he wouldn't comfort you. He'd cut through your uncertainty with truth sharper than sympathy. He'd say, power is not born in applause, but in isolation. And isolation, to him, is not punishment. It's purification. This isn't the pain of losing people. It's the pain of losing the version of yourself who needed their approval. The one who lived for validation. The one who stayed in draining rooms just to feel useful. You're not suffering from loneliness. You're suffering from withdrawal. From the addiction of being needed. From the illusion of belonging. Every time you said yes just to avoid tension, you said no to yourself. Every time you showed up just to prove your worth, you stepped further away from your power. Machiavelli would call this what it truly is, a strategic death. The death of obedience, so that sovereignty can be born. So let it hurt, let it ache, let it burn through you. Because that pain is not weakness, it's detox. You're shedding the skin of the man who existed to please. And beneath it, something far more dangerous is forming. A man who doesn't need permission. A man who doesn't explain. A man who disappears and returns as his own force of nature. Carl Jung called this process individuation. The unification of your fragmented selves into something whole. Machiavelli would see it differently, as a transfer of power from those who fed on your need to be seen back into your own hands. It will feel unnatural. It will feel lonely. But so does every great transformation. The lion isn't born in a crowd. He's born in solitude. And when he roars, it's not for attention. It's because he remembers who he is. So don't run from the pain. Stand in it. Let it purify you. Let it crown you. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of them. And in doing so, you found yourself. If that hits you deep, claim it. My solitude is my sanctuary. There's a difference between being seen and being remembered, between being liked and being respected, between being around and being valued. Most men confuse attention with influence. Machiavelli didn't. He wrote, "The prince who is always seen becomes ordinary, but the one who controls when and how he appears becomes unforgettable." Your problem was never invisibility. It was overexposure. You showed up before anyone even wondered where you were. You responded before anyone missed you. You explained yourself before anyone even asked. And that made you forgettable, predictable, convenient. What is always available loses its mystery. What is always accessible loses its edge. What is always present fades into the background. Scarcity creates value. Distance, when intentional, builds gravity. You don't need to vanish completely. You just need to become strategic with your presence. When you speak too often, your words lose their weight. But when you choose silence, every sentence lands like an earthquake. When you're everywhere, you become noise. But when you appear only when it matters, you become signal. That's calculated absence. Not a game, a discipline. It's how you remind the world of your value without saying a word. Machiavelli would call it asset protection. Because your time, your energy, your focus, these aren't gifts. They're investments. And not everyone qualifies. So here's your new standard. Not everyone gets a reply. Not everyone gets an explanation. Not everyone earns your presence. If they expect you to always show up, challenge that expectation. If they assume you'll always answer, interrupt the pattern. Because when people can't predict you, they start respecting you. Think about gold. Its value isn't in how much it shines, it's in how rare it is. Protected, hard to reach. Why should your attention be any different? Why should your presence be handed out like a free sample? The man who is always seen is soon forgotten. But the one who chooses when to enter, how to speak, and when to vanish, that man becomes unforgettable. That man becomes power. This isn't arrogance. It's sovereignty. It's the mindset of kings, of men who don't exist for convenience, but for consequence. From now on, your attention is currency. Your presence is leverage. Your absence is a reminder. So before every conversation, every message, every meeting, ask yourself, is this person earning my presence or just expecting it by default? If this truth resonates in your bones, mark it down. My presence is earned. What you've walked through so far isn't about being liked. It's not about self-help. It's not even about healing. This is psychological war. A quiet war between the man you were trained to be and the one you must now become. Machiavelli never promised peace. He promised clarity. He didn't teach comfort. He taught control. He didn't value kindness without power. He valued power disguised as kindness, and withdrawn the moment kindness became a leash. If you've been paying attention, then you now understand the one truth that rules all others. A man who doesn't command himself will be commanded by others. And command begins with one act: withdrawal. Withdraw from weakness, from over-explaining, from emotional servitude, from being the man who shows up for everyone but himself. Because when you withdraw, you create distance. And in that distance, something powerful happens: mystery, unreadability, control. When you stop reacting on demand, they don't just wonder where you went. They start questioning what they lost. When you stop justifying your choices, you don't just build boundaries, you build standards. The moment you stop chasing clarity in others, you begin constructing certainty within yourself. You stop performing, you stop apologizing, you stop explaining your evolution to people who only ever knew your obedience. Machiavelli would say this plainly: power is not granted, it's taken. And once taken, it's sustained not by noise, but by calculation. You are not here to be emotionally available to everyone. You are not here to be endlessly understood. You are not here to be easily reached. You are here to lead your own inner kingdom, to decide who enters, who stays, and who never gets a key again. That is what sovereignty means. The Machiavellian man doesn't beg to be seen. He doesn't explain himself to the unworthy. He doesn't move on impulse. He speaks when it serves him. He vanishes when it strengthens him. He returns only when the terrain favors his move. Your new life will not begin with applause. It begins in silence, and it ends in dominance, not over others, but over the one force that has always ruled you: your own impulses. Let others gossip. Let them speculate. Let them build myths to explain your stillness. But you withdraw, you calculate, you move when it matters. Because as Machiavelli said, the game does not belong to the honest. It belongs to the prepared. Now you are. But understand this: preparation is not about paranoia. It's about precision. It's about conserving your energy for the few moves that actually matter. Most men lose themselves in noise. They react to every attack, every insult, every shift in mood. You won't. You'll conserve your fire until it's time to burn, because the greatest weapon of power isn't aggression. It's patience. Every reaction you don't give becomes stored potential. Every silence you hold becomes a blade being sharpened. This is how kings think. They don't waste energy proving their worth. They know worth is built in scarcity. They know mystery commands attention. They know withdrawal forces others to reveal themselves. When you finally stop chasing validation, you start creating gravity. You no longer orbit anyone's expectations, they begin orbiting yours. And that's when power shifts. From this point forward, you measure your moves differently, not by how much noise they make, but by how much control they keep. Every time you're tempted to respond instantly, pause. Every time you feel the urge to explain yourself, observe. Every time you want to prove a point, withdraw. Power doesn't exist in proving. It exists in positioning. Remember this. When you react, you follow their frame. When you explain, you submit to their doubt. When you justify, you lower your value. But when you say nothing, you force the world to interpret you, and in that uncertainty lies authority. The silence of a powerful man does what no speech can do. It makes others question themselves. So, don't fill the silence. Stretch it. Let it breathe. Let them squirm. Let them project. Let them reveal what your quiet has always concealed. Because when you finally master silence, you don't just escape manipulation, you orchestrate it. That is the secret most men never learn. In every interaction, someone sets the frame, and the one who can remain still the longest always wins. You were trained to be reactive. Now, you'll become deliberate. You were trained to please. Now, you'll become sovereign. You were trained to respond instantly. Now, you'll learn to disappear strategically. And when you do, the world won't know how to handle you. They'll call you cold, detached, even heartless. But what you've really become is free. Free from control. Free from chaos. Free from needing to explain yourself to anyone who doesn't deserve to hear your voice. If you feel that shift happening inside you right now, don't ignore it. That's the start of transformation. That's the death of predictability and the birth of power. So write it again in the comments, not as a slogan, but as a command to yourself. My silence commands. You were trained to believe silence needs an explanation, that every distance must come with an apology, that peace requires permission. But that belief was designed to keep you small. Every time you justify your silence, you surrender control. Machiavelli warned, "He who justifies every step gives others the right to question it." And once they believe they can question you, they start managing you. Your silence is not absence, it's declaration. It's your way of saying, "I owe nothing but truth to myself." Your detachment isn't arrogance, it's alignment. You've stopped explaining your value to people who only respected their access to you. When people grow used to your availability, they stop valuing your presence. When they grow used to your forgiveness, they stop fearing your loss. And when they grow used to your explanations, they stop respecting your intuition. That pattern ends now. You are not here to make everyone comfortable. You're not here to keep peace at the expense of your power. You're here to protect your energy, guard your time, and preserve your inner state like a throne. Machiavelli said a ruler must choose between being loved and being respected. Only one guarantees stability. Love can be manipulated. Respect must be earned and maintained. Most men chase love, and in doing so, become servants to emotion. They give everything and receive only expectation in return. Clarity is a sword. Silence is its sheath. When you stop defending your peace, you finally wield both. So when someone says, "You've changed," don't explain. Just smile. What they mean is, you're no longer under my control. You're not here to be endlessly available. You're not here to be endlessly understood. You're here to evolve. And evolution doesn't come with permission slips. Let them misunderstand. Let them create stories. Every man who rises into sovereignty must face the guilt of no longer being accessible to those who fed on his obedience. That guilt fades. What remains is power. Calm, deliberate, silent power. If this truth resonates with you, type it. I owe no explanations for protecting my peace. There's a kind of silence that stings at first. It's the silence after you stop replying, stop rescuing, stop explaining. It feels like loss, but it's rebirth. The quiet you're hearing isn't emptiness. It's the echo of your own strength returning. Every man must walk through this. It's the silence between versions, between the man who needed approval and the man who no longer does. Carl Jung called it individuation, becoming whole. Machiavelli would call it consolidation, regaining control. It's not punishment. It's purification. The pain you feel is detox. You're shedding the part of you that was trained to overgive. You're letting the version of yourself that chased validation finally die. And what's being born in that silence is something untouchable, a man who no longer needs permission. The lion isn't born in applause. He's born in solitude. His roar isn't for attention. It's recognition. So let it burn. Let the silence refine you. You didn't lose them. You lost the illusion of them. You didn't lose love. You lost dependency. If this speaks to you, write it. My solitude is my sanctuary. There's a difference between being known and being respected, between being seen and being remembered, between being liked and being feared to lose. Machiavelli said, "The prince who is always seen becomes ordinary, but the one who chooses when to appear becomes unforgettable." Your constant presence made you convenient. Your distance will now make you powerful. You don't need to vanish. You just need to become strategic. Speak less. Move slower. Appear when it matters. What is rare commands. Every word you withhold adds weight to the ones you choose. Every absence increases the gravity of your return. Every silence builds pressure that only your presence can release. From now on, your attention is currency. Your presence is leverage. Your absence is power. Before every message, every call, every meeting, ask yourself, is this person earning my presence or expecting it? If they expect it, withdraw. If they've earned it, engage with intention. That's not coldness, that's control. This is sovereignty, the mindset of a man who moves with precision, not emotion. The man who no longer chases validation, he commands attention. The man who no longer explains himself, he lets silence speak. From this moment on, you don't react. You calculate. You don't overextend. You conserve. You don't chase. You rise. Write it in the comments and make it your code. I don't react. I calculate. I conserve. I rise. Because silence is not emptiness. It is power. And now you own it.